But basically, there's the iconic run pose. If you're doing any type of illustration work or something like that, and someone says, draw a character running from something, then you have this sort of standard pose where the character is basically like this. Okay, there's your basic run pose, where the line of action running through the legs is a nice big S curve coming through like that. We got a knee here, a knee back here, there's your pelvis and your feet, body leaning forward into the run, and then your big S curve line of action through the arms as well for the churning action of the arms. So that's sort of your standard iconic run type of a pose. Now, what you need to do is you need to actually do the run yourself to try and figure out exactly what the cadence is, what the high point is. The high point will be in this position here, and the character physically has to come off the ground. So the surface of the cycle is down here. So the character has to be in a high point in this position. And then what happens is we have 4 basic poses that we're going to do. This will be your first pose. Then we have the opposing mirror image of it, which are your 2 primary keys. Then your secondary keys are the contact points where the character is in mid-stride. So if I do a quick little pose of that, we'll contact on the ground down here. Have your leg in the figure 4 position. Basically, we have that type of an action there. Okay. So there has to be that type of an action. If you want to bend the leg a little bit more to cushion at this point, it's fine to do that. If you keep the leg straight, that's fine. But still, the full stride position, that must be up in the air. So that's got to be your high point. All right? So we'll have this will be your primary key. This will be your secondary key. So your numbering system will basically be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's an 8 drawing run cycle. So your 2 primary keys, these 2 here, are number 1 and 5. And your 2 breakdowns are 3 and 7. That's these poses here. Okay. Now remember, on a walk cycle, a 16 drawing walk cycle, we had essentially the same type of thing. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll remember was the breakdown, which is 3 now. 6, 7, 8, and then we went to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 was the opposing breakdown, 14, 15, and 16. So 1 and 9 were your 2 keys. Basically all we're doing is we're taking out a drawing in between each of these, over here too. So that's 16 altogether there. This is 16 here. It's just that there's no in-between on each of your major drawings. All right? So once you've got your primary keys, these 2 drawings here, and you've got these 2 drawings here, all you have to do is drop an in-between on each one. Right? Now, let me just talk to you briefly about the timing. So if we're doing this type of a timing here, your timing charts will essentially look like this. One would be down here, and then we're going up to 5. Okay. Your timing charts will look like that. 2, 3, 4, up to 5, and then your 5 timing chart will look exactly the same. Going back to 1 over here. So you've got quarters and halves. 6, 7, 8. Those are your timing charts. Right? Now, that's not to say that you can't modify this, right? Because that's a pretty quick run when you're doing it at this speed. It's double the speed of your normal walk cycle. So it's a pretty fast run. But depending on the emotion of the character, it may slow down. It won't. I don't want you to speed it up, okay? Because this is pretty fast. Do not do anything less than an 8 drawing cycle. But now you can up the number of drawings. So if your character is really ecstatically happy, they might have a run where it's like da 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 da, right? If they're more joyful. Or if they're sad, it might be even slower. It's like da 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 da, that type of a run. Okay, so that means you're going to add in more drawings. So your options now are, where are you going to put your drawings in here? So your option basically is to put extra drawings in here or extra drawings in here. So your timing chart, if we're looking at the distance that something is going to move, if let's say this is your number 1 position here, and this is what is your 5 right now, we'll just lightly draw it in there. At this point right now, we're putting in a 3 halfway. Right? But what's to say that we can't do this instead of a halfway? We're doing this. So now we're working on thirds. And then we drop an in between halfway on each of these. So now it's 2, 3, 4 is the breakdown, not 3. 5, 6, 7 is your opposite key. Right? Then going from 7 on this side, same type of a timing chart. Breaking it into thirds, then halves on each one. It's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and back to 1. So it's a 12 drawing cycle now, because we put these two drawings here and here on thirds. Right? So we're upping the number of drawings. We can do it again in a slightly different way. If we're moving our character from a bottom position here, this is his pelvis, and we're going into a high position up here, what assignment is this? It's the single ball bounce, right? We're just moving the ball up and down like this. So you remember the timing on the ball bounce that we had before. We had the timing chart going like this, where we're starting at the high point and coming down to the low point. I'll do it so that it reflects the same, drawing. We'll say that this is number 1 up here. Okay, remember what we did? We had it slowing out of this position here and speeding up as it goes down. So our timing chart looked like this. We had 2, 3, 4, 5 was our breakdown. Then we had a 6 down here as the favor, and 7 was our low point, right? Which means that as it goes up, it slows down, and as it comes down, it speeds up. So we had this type of an action. Quicker at the bottom, slower at the top. Okay, gravity's taking over. So we can still do that same type of thing, which would be appropriate for the run. But you don't have to stick exactly with this. You can now start to slide your timing chart around a little bit and play with what is the half. And even to the point where you're not even doing in-betweens up in here. These drawings are all stuck into this position here. So it gets up there quicker and hovers there at the high point and then drops out of it. Right? So some people did that, and the first semester students that are working on the ball bounce right now, some of them are doing that by accident, where instead of putting the in-between in here, what they're doing is they're tracing off drawing number 1. So the ball gets to the high point and it holds there for 4 frames and then drops. So there's this little bit of a pause there. It has a little bit of a jerky action to it, but it has that effect. So what you have to do is you have to decide, how much do I want to ease into that position? So again, with your timing chart, you don't necessarily have to go to the halfway position. You could go to a quarter position, which is more of a favor. And then make this a favor as well, and then put those two drawings that are basically at the high point. So it gets up there very quickly. This is your speed. It gets up there very quickly and then holds up here for a little bit longer. So you still have the same number of drawings overall. You could put in a favor down here as well. So this could be your number 6. This could be your number 7 down here. Same number of drawings overall. It's just that your 5 is now where your 4 was in the 1/4 position. Your 3 is up where your 2 was, and your 2 is practically on top of your 1. So up here, it's going much slower at the high point. You can do that, right? So you can modify your timing in any way that you want to make your character do whatever you want. Now here's the real trick though, that when you're doing your key drawings, and I want to emphasize this a lot, because a lot of people goof up on this. I can remember when I was going through animation, I did this all the time, and it messed me up royally until I figured out how not to do it. And here's the trick. When you're doing your key drawings, there is no number on your drawing. Do not number your drawings. What you do is you do your key positions, these two key positions in opposition to each other, and you do these two key positions in opposition to each other, and then you shoot a pencil test. And you play with the timing. You shoot one drawing for 8 frames and the other drawing for 4 frames. Play it, see what it looks like. And then plus or minus the frames into it. So maybe your one drawing is held for 10 frames, and the other drawing is held for 4 frames. Which means that it's going to hold for longer on the one point, so you're easing into it. So then you get to determine on your timing, on your exposure sheet actually, how many frames you have in between those keys, and it will automatically dictate to you how many in-betweens you have to put in there. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at your exposure sheet, it'll have those blank frames in there. So it'll show your key position, which is on this certain frame here, and then however many number of frames you've allotted to it in your overall timing on the pencil test. Let's say your next key position is down here. You simply count through the number of frames, and every second frame is where you put in an in-between. And on some of them you might have one extra frame down at the bottom, which means that one of your drawings is going to be on ones. And you're perfectly okay to do that. Because what you're doing is you're checking your key positions to see whether or not they show the position of the character as you want it to be shown, and then when you shoot it as a pencil test, it's telling you whether it's timed properly. And that is malleable. You can play with that as much as you want, until visually when you watch the pencil test, you look at it and you go, yeah, that's what I want. And then your timing is automatic. The only question you have to ask yourself once you've done the pencil test and you count the number of frames on the exposure sheet, once that's done, that tells you how many in-betweens go in there. The only question at that point now is, on a timing chart, is, let's say there's 3 in-betweens. Your question now is it evenly spaced? If we're going from down here, let's say this is number 1 down here, is it evenly spaced? Am I going to slow into the action? Am I going to slow out of the action? Or am I going to do something special where maybe I put this as a favor up here and bunch the drawings up like this for more of a slow in? So it's just slow in, slow out, constant rate. And then to modify onto this, if you wanted to, you could put a slow in and a slow out on either side like that, just by adding more frames into it. So it not only slows in, speeds up here, and then slows down at the opposite end. Those are the only questions you have to ask at that point. Once your timing charts are done, you just go back and you start dropping in your in-betweens. And then you have to make judgment calls as to where the actual position is. Because remember, we defaulted in first semester to, if it says halfway, it's physically halfway. But then we've learned in the last couple of assignments, halfway does not mean halfway. You can favor it on different parts. All right?